I'm Angus Armstrong, Director of the Rebuilding Macroeconomics Network. And a very warm welcome to the Treasury. Delighted to be hosting this conference here at the Treasury. It's almost 10 years ago since Her Majesty the Queen asked this famous question, why did no one see the crisis coming? What perhaps is less well known is there was actually an attempt to answer this question. So a group of about 30 academics and policymakers got together at the British Academy and sat down and composed a long letter back to the Queen. And the final paragraph was this, that the failure was of the collective imagination to see the risks of the system as a whole. So there's two key points there. Collective imagination, not normally the sort of things you think about economics. And secondly, to understand the risks to the system as a whole. And of course, system to the whole is really where macroeconomics comes in. Rather like this definition by Greg Mankiw about the size of the tasks facing macroeconomics, it's not to propose elegant theories, to solve practical problems. And when we think about the planetary boundaries, the international cooperation, national economic performance, social fragmentation, even financial and economic policies, all of those at the moment are under review. So we have some very big questions that are not modest in dimension that we want to consider. And on further inspection, the Economic and Social Research Council concluded that perhaps there's something of a monoculture in our macroeconomics in academia. And secondly, perhaps there's something of a disconnect between academia and policy making. So it was on the basis of addressing both those issues that we created Rebuilding Macroeconomics, and we're very grateful to the ESRC for our funding. We're a network of 18 co-investigators, funded by the ESRC for 4 years, and hosted at the National Institute of Economic and Social Research, which is based in Westminster. Now, how do we work? Well, this is our management group, and there's 5 of us, and the first thing to notice is there's more non-economists than economists. So that's kind of interesting for an economics network. There's myself, Laura Baer, who is here somewhere, right down here. Laura Baer is the head of department in anthropology at London School of Economics. Doreen Farmer is a professor of complexity at Oxford University. David Tuckett is Professor of Psychology at the University College of London. And I should particularly mention David, who's sitting right here, who really is the sort of brains behind the design of this conference. I would never have done it. So it's really in David's image that this is being created. And Roger Farmer, who's also a macroeconomist, who is just recovering from a procedure in America, so is unable to be with us today, but he's 100% fine. He's from Warwick University and the National Institute. So we have an eclectic group of people on the management team with very different perspectives in looking at these macroeconomic issues. Our objective is to transform macroeconomics back into a policy-relevant social science. And the way we intend to do it is by creating research hubs. So we've created research hubs. These are really crucibles where people from different perspectives can look at a problem, and it must be an economics question, from different scholarly lenses, and policymakers take part. So the idea is for them to generate new thinking and to challenge each other and to come out with new ideas. Just to give you a flavour of the type of hubs we've got, the first hub asks the question, can globalisation benefit all? That's led by Steve Kinsella from the University of Limerick. The second hub is why are economies unstable, led by Roger and Professor Jean-Philippe Bouchot from École Polytechnique in Paris. Thirdly, do we have confidence in our economic institutions, led by Laura and Gary Dimsky, Laura at LSE and Gary at Leeds. The fourth, does social cooperation affect economic performance, led by Dennis Snower and Paul Collier. And the fifth, how do we achieve a sustainable economy, led by Michael Grubb from UCL and Tiago Cavalcanti from Cambridge University, and last but not least, Ekaterina Svetlova has running a hub, is the financial system fit for purpose? So you can see we're really trying to ask big questions. Now, these hubs don't just have discussions, they are also responsible for issuing research calls. So we have money, and the idea is to invite and encourage and stimulate new research projects. We're particularly interested in interdisciplinary research proposals that introduce new methods such as chaos theory, agent-based modelling into macroeconomics. Now, we have just closed 2 calls, one on instability and another on globalization, and we haven't decided which one we're going to fund yet, but I can say, having gone through all the instability ones, we have some great projects on, from cognitive scientists, people working on behavioural theories, chaos models, agent-based models, an anthropological study. These are all in the shortlist. So there's some really very rich and very encouraging projects that have been proposed. Now, in terms of these research calls, there'll be another 3 research calls coming out between now and the end of the year. And one thing we've found is quite often people say, but how do I find out about them? And this is a screenshot from our website. All of the calls get put on here, so it's very easy to find it. It's rebuildingmacroeconomics.ac.uk. All of the calls will be placed there. At the end of the 4-year period, we're going to put together a roadmap and present it to the ESRC with all of the research findings to try and suggest what we think are the most fruitful avenues of future research in terms of understanding the macroeconomy. So that is our strategy for trying to address those questions that the British Academy, the Queen, and even Greg Mankiw posed for us. So coming to the first part of the Queen's Arts, about the collective imagination, this is something that economists can perhaps be slightly forgiven for, because in our models, most of our models, you can solve all of the decision making today, tomorrow, and every period into the infinite future. It all gets resolved. So there's not a great deal of imagination required for those agents. But in terms of imagination, without uncertainty, it's quite hard, real uncertainty, it's quite hard to see a role here. So we've really taken a lead from Herbert Simon that there's nothing more important in setting the research agenda than our view of the human beings whose behaviour we are studying. So that's really the basis for what we're trying to do today and tomorrow. And we're looking at reasoning, emotion, decision-making, interaction and human behaviour to try and think about what is the best way to start understanding the macroeconomy and perhaps change the focus of some of our macroeconomics. We're delighted to welcome here, we have neuroscientists, cognitive scientists, complexity theorists, anthropologists, sociologists, and a lot of economists. So the first thing is, if I can thank all of the speakers, discussants and chairs for taking part. Many people have travelled thousands of miles to come here, so we're indebted and very grateful for all of you giving up your time. We're going to be looking for as much engagement as possible from the audience with the panel, so each session we've got at least 20 minutes for discussion, so I'd encourage you all to ask them questions and try and really get this interaction going between the various disciplines who are represented. In order to do that, the chairs are going to have to be as disciplined as possible, and they are completely forgiven if they have to be a little bit harsh with the speakers, but we do have to keep to time. We've got 7 sessions to get through today. So if the chairs can be as disciplined as possible. And in fact, in keeping with our idea of bringing together academia and policy making, I'm very grateful to all of our chairs who are almost all current policymakers, and we're particularly grateful to the Bank of England. I think we have 4 MPC members and 1 person who's just stepped down from the MPC will be chairing these sessions, so it's fantastic we've got that sort of interaction from policymakers as well. And finally, to the housekeeping rules. The Treasury has issued us a number of housekeeping rules, which you can see here. Always have to be escorted outside of the conference room, so wherever you're going to go, they will wait outside the bathroom for you. So you have to be escorted at all times. Take all of your belongings with you. Keep your passes visible at all times. The event is filmed, so if somebody, we ask people who are here, if you don't want to be filmed, please let Robert or Gavin know here, and they will make sure that you're not anywhere in the film. We have a hashtag for those who tweet, which is Rebuild Macro. And if there's a fire alarm, we have to go out through the doors exactly the same way that you came in, and you'll be escorted. Finally, I would like to thank Nick Hindhow, who has been kind enough from the Government Economics Service to help organise this from the government's point of view, particularly to congratulate them on their new apprenticeships for economics degrees, which is a great initiative, and I think will actually really help in terms of diversity of ideas in some of these important policy institutions. I had 8 very happy years working at this institution, and I know how committed and hard working the staff are, so we're very grateful, and it's a pleasure to be back here. Can I therefore start off by beginning the first panel and invite Vuk Jemeric, who is the President and, for the Centre for International Relations and Sustainable Development and former President of the United Nations, who is going to chair the first session on the perspectives from sociology and anthropology. Vuk, over to you.